Dealing with a very intense spontaneous Kundalini awakening background, I'm sure you have met and seen many people with spontaneous Kundalini awakenings, and that this subject is not new to you. 10 years ago, I had an intense and spontaneous awakening of Shakti energy. I had some energetic episodes before that one, but wasn't aware of what Kundalini Shakti was back then. My first awakening was very strong and overwhelming, and I developed anxiety attacks and an abyss period like a dark night of the soul. I was only getting more balanced after a year or so, and it was a hard time for me. Since then, I started to learn more and more about Shakti and whatever I could find about the process. My issue is that in the last few months, I had deeper meditations, going into samadhi faster, experiencing light most of the time, and my consciousness expands to deeper levels. Now that I've gotten into a stage where I feel I cannot contain the energy and it is getting stronger and stronger, it is so strong up to my crown, pushing up in a way I hadn't experienced yet. I can really feel the Kundalini present and moving from one place to another. I also can move it from place to place, but it does what it does. It is also strong in the third eye and heart and the rest of my body. I am having a hard time sleeping, and when I fall asleep, it immediately wakes me up. Probably a fear of what is coming up or something. I haven't slept for almost 5 nights now, and I'm very tired, exhausted and fatigued, and my eyesight is foggy. I can't eat. My breath has different patterns and is very slow, like kumbhaka. The air goes in but does not go out, and I feel swollen and puffy. Deep emotional kriyas hit and are changing rapidly, and I am feeling ungrounded. It feels like it is a new level I'm going through, and a lot of things are trying to be released that I don't know how to react to and handle. Fear and anxiety comes and go, and the fear comes up when energy gets strong and feels like I am leaving my body, ascending like when going on the astral plane, and it makes me very stressed doing that right now when I have no defense mechanisms. Thank you again, Igor, for your work and many blessings. Question: I am asking if there is any advice or assistance you can give for my condition. Anything would help to just make it somewhat easier going through this phase.
Good sharing. Thank you for sharing. So first of all, I want to begin with words of encouragement. Everything that you have shared indicates that you are amidst the process, and none of what you have shared sounds as something is going wrong. So this is, first of all, I want you to understand, and you said here that you've started to learn more and more about Shakti, and whatever you could find about the process. So there must be by now an understanding rising in you that it's not that something happening to you, but rather you happening to yourself. This is how we like rewarding it in our community. It's this whole process of awakening. If we are seeing it too much through the clinical lens, we are in danger of ending up with that clinical perspective, with that clinical understanding that indeed there is some kind of process, as kind of illness, like when you study the cause of the how the certain disease, how it, the stages, what all the physicians essentially describe, the stages all the way to the culmination and then the healing processes. We don't want to see this through the lenses of the pathology. On the contrary, we want to see the process of awakening as, in fact, recovering from a long-term illness. So, in other words, awakening is indeed reclaiming the healthy state of who we are. And again, the confusion rises primarily because our culture currently is so oriented on experiencing and preferring pleasure that we almost panically afraid of pain. We do not want pain. There is an article I read very recently, how now the birth through the cesarean section is more preferable in many so-called civilized countries because it somehow allows young woman, very often, giving first birth, to avoid that otherwise undescribable pain which many young women simply don't want to go through. This is very worrying because this very pain itself that the body of a female goes through produces the hormones required for the healthy state of the child throughout the whole entire life, we could say. Because the endorphins and the hormones that the body produces are then still exchanged with the baby. It is the way that nature has desired. I'm not talking about undesirable pathological birth. No, of course they are sometimes endangering the life of the mother, then surgical intervention is required, necessary. But it is done routinely, simply because women prefer that. I don't want to go through pain, inject me with painkillers, and let me just have the baby as soon as out and done with. So this perspective of our culture is such that awakening itself is very often seen as something is happening to my body, that it goes through these crumbling phases. Something happening to my mind that goes through crumbling phases. Something happening to my psyche that it goes through these crumbling phases. And this often is pathologized and seen as undesirable. Whereas in fact, if we read the literature and the accounts that are left in the cultures where there were preparatory rites, then we would find a reverse, that the yogis, for example, would welcome all this symptomatology and rejoice in that, because that's exactly what they have worked all along for that moment when all this structure begins to crumble. It begins to crumble because without this structure to crumble, there is no metamorphosis. The metamorphosis is the death of the worm and into the homeostasis phase when it will turn into a butterfly. Just like a quick metaphor. Here is a metaphor. So, you're asking for an advice or assistance. So this is first my advice, is to see this process as the blessing. Very important that you see this as a blessing. Very important, no matter how hard it gets, you see this as the highest blessing, because it's better to be awake to go through this than to spend your life in complete state of slumber in this, the called normality of being just human being and not knowing why and what for. You would sooner or later, if you begin to read about that, you would encounter perspectives very, very often found in Sufi literature, in Gnostic literature, in Tantric literature certainly, where distinction is being made on awakened and unawakened beings in terms of the essentially someone who is just a walking dead. Someone who is like, seems to be alive, but actually as good as dead. That person is not even awake on a soul level. The soul is in a state of potentiality. Everything is working in that organism. Yes, this person can play violin, can recite Shakespeare, it can fork out certain algorithmical combinations, certainly work all this machinery and the equipment that our life is made easier with, have children, grandchildren and so forth. But does that mean that that person actually is awake on a soul level? Remains a question. So the ordeal of awakening is a part and the parcel of transformation. And the more acceptance we can generate, the easier it would go, at least on a psychological level, whatever karmically we have to encounter. Now, then you're asking me for assistance, okay? And in your condition. First of all, it's not a condition, it's a blessing. So let's call it for what it is. However, when you ask me for an assistance, here it becomes tricky. I cannot just assist you in your process through this online format. You need to look for an adept, you need to look for a teacher who will be that guiding light in this process. And you have heard me speaking about it. I hope there are enough YouTube channels, YouTube channels by other teachers. I hope there are enough of our own material out there where the emphasis is being made that where is the teacher is required for someone who is not awakened is questionable and open to discussion. The teacher is a must for someone who is undergoing this process because of the very nature of the process itself. So this is, again, let me plug in immediately. I don't need to beat about the bush. If you're feeling connected to this work, if you feel that somehow you feel resonance on any levels, on mental, emotional, psychological, if you have this connection, then the doors of our academy, we don't have a building of our own, but the academy is there, is open. So, and there is a process how to qualify. You can come and join us first in our programs, and you will find that tremendously helpful. It's as simple as that. If you have been attracted to other teachers, then by all means, go and do your proper research, but you do need someone who will guide you through this process because these are still very early stages. There are many, many phases and subtleties to this process. It's not going to be over tomorrow or day after. So you said here you haven't slept for 5 nights. Do you know I've met people who now have more likes and more watched on the YouTube than myself. And they come to me for advice and they haven't slept for 10 years, not 5 days. There are people who haven't slept properly for 10 to 6 years because they don't know how to deal with this energy and what to do because in the lineage they belong to, it is not addressed. But let me keep myself cool here. I don't want to get overly passionate here, but just this is my advice and my assistance. That assistance cannot be given in this format. You have to come and sit with me, sit with us in the container. This is where the greatest assistance can be offered.
Yeah, many people have said that they've slept for the first night after a long time, after just being in your presence.
Well, yeah, it happens. Of course, it happens as well. And we take this humbly, but also with a pinch of salt, because all this reminds us how poor actually is the education on these topics out there. So it's nothing to be proud of. It's actually something that we need to bring out into the open as soon as we are capable as a community. Because our work is to create research facilities where this, what we call awakening, can be given due attention. It's a very big theme in its own right.